Hi, welcome to my Christmas dessert 2020, the year that Mother Nature got sick of us all and we got sent back to our bedrooms. When I made the sweet potato fudge, I kind of had the idea that it'd be nice to make a tart with it. So that's what I'm going to do. I found these stuck down the back of something in the cupboard and they're out of date, so they need using. So I thought, well, let's put the two together, see what we can make. So it's going to be a sweet potato, chocolate and chestnut tart filling inside a hazelnut pastry case. And I think I'm going to flood the top with some sort of ganache. Yum! I'm going to serve it with a kind of, like a butter really, a bit like the apple butter. I'm going to use pears, apples, cherries, and carrots. Don't know why, I can't explain this, but as I was getting things together, I picked them up and thought, well, let's go with it and see what happens. The first job is going to be softening the fruit down. If you've watched the apple butter video, we're not doing it that way. We're going to do it in the oven because it's much faster and easier and less painful. I have the oven on at 175 degrees C. So I'm going to chop up all the fruit. Now, with your pears and apples, just leave them completely whole because the pectin, the bit that's going to set it up, is in that, is in the core. I've got 4 apples that I'm doing and 2 pears. These carrots are way past the best, so I'm going to peel them just because the skin's a little bit bitter. Changed my mind. I have more potatoes, so because the carrots are quite hard, relatively speaking, I'm going to chop this quite small. I bought these on a whim online, one of my 2 a.m. eBay frenzies. They're dried white mulberries. I forgot I needed to put the cherries in as well, so the other bowl wouldn't be big enough either. These are dried. They taste a bit like raisins, ever so slightly. There's a nice sweetness to them. So I'm going to use their sweetness to sweeten the whole dish, the whole butter, rather than adding sugar. There's 50 grams of the mulberries here, and I'm putting them in now because what I'd like to happen is as everything starts baking down, the fruits release liquid. So I want these to soak that liquid up a bit, just to get them soft. And then I'll blend everything down and then reduce it again. Sprinkle those in, pour the cherries in, and then stick those in the oven. I bought a new sieve because the other 2 really hurt my hands. And this one's called a tammy sieve. So it's almost like a cake tin with a wire bottom. So you just put it in the bowl and then it just means it's a bit easier hopefully. I've had to put my wrist guard on because this is going to hurt. I'm having a day today, to put it mildly, so I'm going to drink my way through it. Just going to check on the fruit. Thinking about it, what I should have done was put the mulberries on the bottom so that they can get maximum contact with all the liquid. Try and wiggle those down to the bottom. Put those back in. Okay, so the crap sieve is broken already. Old reliable it is. I'm doing the sweet potato in the same way that I did for the sweet potato fudge and the same process for the pumpkin pie cookies. So if you want a bit more in-depth, that's where you look. So there's probably about 1100 grams-ish of puree. Smooth it down. Put that in the oven. Give the fruit a little stir. It's getting nice and soft. In fact, I can't stir it too much because I want the berries at the bottom. Are they softening up? Yeah. Put these back in. I'll put those in for another 10 minutes and hopefully that'll have got the carrots and the apples nicely softened. Check on the fruit. A horrible feeling, the oven's breaking. Because of course it is. Give this a blend. Pass it through a sieve just to make sure it's lovely and smooth. Completely optional step. Yeah, that was a great idea. I would actually recommend sieving it because pears especially can be quite woody, and you're also going to have little bits of stem and stalks and core, all that kind of thing. I think my oven's just died. Cranked the heat up a bit, see if that helps, but it's on and I've just been able to touch the bars, so it's not looking good. Gonna add some spices in here, boost the flavour up a bit. So use some Cardamom Pods. Use 4. Give them a little smash. A few pieces of cinnamon bark. About 8 to 10 cloves. Some cloves, a handful. Not a handful. Definitely don't do that. I'm using licorice root. Try it before you turn your nose up at it. It's delicious. And it doesn't really, I mean, it has a licorice taste, but because there's no molasses, obviously, it hasn't got that licorice candy taste. It adds a really nice sweetness and a real roundness to the flavour. And I found the easiest way of doing it is just to use a speed peeler. Give this a stir around. The day has gone from bad to worse. The oven's broken. Yeah, that's amazing on Christmas Eve. So I now need to air fry the butter, the puree and the pastry case. So I guess I'm not going to be sleeping for a while tonight. I'm going to try and line the air fryer basket. It's the only thing I can do, really. There's a huge part of me that thinks just knock this on the head before anything else goes wrong. But I'm not gonna. This is going in the air fryer. I'm going to do about 160, I think, and then to keep an eye on it because it can go really fast. Probably for 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Another change of plan. I'm going to do it in a non-stick wok because that's going to make it a bit easier. It won't catch on the bottom as much. I've used my little rubber bomb guys because I need the lid cracked. Well, ideally it would be lid off, but then I'd end up covered in cherry butter and it really hurts. This has had about 50 minutes or so. You can see it's getting nice and thick, drying out. And here is how we are with the butter. Time to make the hazelnut pastry. This is 175 grams of plain flour, 75 grams of icing sugar, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Give that a good sieve. I'm going to now sort of cut in 150 grams of vegan butter. I'm adding 50 grams of ground roasted hazelnuts. You can use any kind of nut really, doesn't necessarily have to be roasted either. Work that together. I'm going with my hands just because I think it's going to be a bit quicker. If you can, just use your fingertips because the palm of your hand is very hot, so it will melt the butter. I'm going to add tablespoons of cold water, a few at a time. So we've got 4. And just keep working it together. Okay. That's all it needs really, 4. I'm rolling it between 2 silicone mats. I just find it makes it a bit easier to lift and transport around. This is the only size tin that will go in the air fryer, so I had to make it much smaller. So I'm going to be left over with loads of extra dough because I'm too stressed to do the conversions of making a smaller amount. I can just stick it in the freezer and then have a little tartlet at some point. Just check it for size. You can always patch the rim up though as well, that's not a problem. Sort of lift it and let it sit sink in, and then we'll squidge it around and make it comfy. I'm pricking the base. It helps steam escape as it's baking, so it doesn't puff up and distort. And I'll now put this in the fridge for about half an hour or so to let it chill and firm up, and then it'll just bake much crisper in the air fryer. The pastry has been chilling for about half an hour, so I'm going to trim off the excess and maybe do something with the top of it. So I'm just going to cut around. Nah, I'm just going to leave the top as is. I don't want to make a mess of it. If you see any really thick parts, just try and thin them down a little bit and then trim off the excess again. Line the pastry case with some baking parchment. If you scrunch it up, it makes it a bit easier to manipulate. And then I'm filling it up with dried beans. And that'll stop the bottom from lifting up too much and puffing. So I'll put this in at 160 degrees C, about 325 Fahrenheit, for 8 to 10 minutes. Wow, I'm gonna have to keep checking it because I've not done pastry in the air fryer before. The tart case had 19 minutes at 160, then 10 minutes at 150. Then I took the beans out and put these around the edge, the top, just to stop that from colouring much more, and did it for another 15 minutes at 160. Put this on a wire rack to cool. Now, butter's done as well. It's really nice and thick. So I'm going to pass it through a sieve, get rid of those spices. I added a squeeze of lemon juice just to lift the flavour up a little bit, to brighten it, because it's very sweet. And the lemons just brought that back down a bit. This is 100 grams of dark chocolate, which I need to melt. So I'm going to put that over a pan of hot water. For an extra bit of spiced flavour, I'm using about a heaped tablespoon of chopped stem ginger, the stuff that comes in jars in kind of syrup. Put those in. Once this has cooled down, I'll pack it into a little sterilised jar. I'm ready to go tomorrow. Quite happy with that. Nice. Once the chocolate's got to a nice melted point, we're kind of ready to go. Stir in the sweet potato puree. There's 540 grams of it there. Work that into the chocolate. Putting in about 25 grams of vegan butter. 200 gram pouch of chestnut puree. I think there'll only be room for one of the pouches, given that I've got a much smaller tart than I anticipated. Put it back on the heat just to soften it a little bit because the chocolate's starting to harden. It's probably worth mashing the puree down a bit, maybe even heating it before dumping it in, because this is taking forever. I'm ramping up the chocolate flavour with some cocoa powder. So I've got a tablespoon, heaped tablespoon, 2 tablespoons for now. Might try making a couple of truffles with some of the mixture, see how that works. I'll put this bit to the side. Give it a try at this stage. Another heaped tablespoon of cocoa. I'm warming up some malt extract. The cocoa is obviously very bitter, so I'm just going to try and balance the sweetness a tiny bit. One more. So I think we're at 3 tablespoons of cocoa and about a tablespoon of malt extract. You could use golden syrup or corn syrup, depending on where you are. Even some hot chocolate powder will be good, because that's got some sugars in it. Or just sugar. Brown sugar would be really good, muscovado sugar. And one more cocoa for luck. I've lost count now, maybe 4. I'm also going to add in a couple of drops of vanilla, just to make it sing. Case is nice and cool. Crisped up really well. This is going to need a somewhat delicate touch because the case, it might be a bit brittle. So dollop it in. This now needs to cool down, and then I'm going to flood the top of it with a ganache. Yeah, so it's on a really nice, shiny, ultra chocolatey bit on top. I think it'll set it off really nicely. That little bit I kept behind, roll it into a ball, and then just coat it in cocoa. A couple of little bonbons. So I'll leave those to set up and have a go on them later. The tart is actually cool enough for me to do the ganache, so yay! First stage is to heat up 200 grams. This is 200 grams of dark chocolate. I just blitzed up in the food processor so it's nice and fine. Do take care not to let the milk get too hot because it will burn the chocolate apparently. I'm adding a bit of butter just to make it extra shiny, so maybe, I don't know, a teaspoon. And once the coconut cream is hot, but not too hot, so you want it to just start to hurt, pour it over the chocolate. I should have done this in a jug really to make it easier, but never mind. And then I'm just going to flood the top of the pie with it. The remainder I'll put in the freezer. Apparently it freezes up quite fudge-like. And I'll leave that to set up. Oh, came so close. So this time I will see you on Boxing Day because I'm not filming on Christmas. It's now December 28th, 4 days after I made the tart, pie, not sure what I'm going to call it yet. It's set perfectly, exactly how I hoped it would. The filling's really nice and dense, but not heavy. And then that ganache that I put on the very end, again that's set, but it's more like a very soft fudge, that kind of texture. Dive in. It's so good. And I don't care if that's bragging. That deserves to be bragged about. Especially considering the multiple disasters I had. This bit on the side is Biscoff mixed with vegan cream cheese. Sets it off perfectly. Because there isn't tons of sweetness in the tart itself, the sweetness from the cherry butter pulls it up, and then the creaminess from the cream cheese balances it out a little bit. So the three together, oh, it just works perfectly. You can also mix that with a bit of vanilla yogurt, vegan cream cheese and vanilla yogurt. Really, really good. You want a bit of tanginess just to cut through the intense chocolate flavour and also the cherry and ginger flavour. You'll probably find that the ganache goes dull on top once it's cooled down, but the way to remedy that, right before serving it, get a lighter and just run the lighter over the top and it'll go shiny again. But the combination of the three of them together. When I make it again, and it definitely will be a when, not an if, because it's banging, I'm going to double, maybe even triple the amount of chocolate and maybe double the amount of cocoa powder just to get a really intense chocolate punch to it. It's great as it is, but I think it can be next level with just a bit of extra chocolate in there. Potentially even pour melted chocolate onto the empty pastry and then run it around and let that set just to give an extra little hint, a little surprise of chocolate at the bottom. That mix would also work really well, I think, if same quantities but put in 2 tubs of vegan cream cheese and then you've got a kind of no-bake cream cheese. Maybe even make a mousse with whipped aquafaba and then fold it together and then let that set. That would be really good. For more inspiration on how to still churn out delicious desserts despite your kitchen appliances' death, then hit subscribe, tap that bell icon, and let's see if the microwave blows up next. Shouldn't have said that, should I?